I would.
Uh-oh. See, we've suddenly become all very quiet now. Recording in progress.
Exactly. I was going to say it's been a very busy season right from September onwards.
It seems everyone wants to.
July.
Sorry, it started off in July, the craziness?
No, the craziness in my life started off performance-wise.
Huh. I think, post-COVID, it seems like, people talk about revenge tourism, but I think there's revenge everything.
Absolutely.
People are very interested in joining everything. Oh, that's the room.
Yeah, that's the room. Oh, oh hi.
Good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible, absolutely. But you're very far. I'm used to, Kiran, you're very far.
Okay, so
if you get closer to the mic, I think we'll be able to.
would this be better?
I'd like to see more of your face.
Hello, namaskar.
Namaskar, beta. I'd like to see more of you guys, yeah.
Yeah, we're just figuring out the technicalities. This is Hiteshree. She is the moderator. We will do the formal introductions in just a second. We're just figuring out how to be closer to the camera. I'm so sorry about the inconvenience. Just give us a few minutes and we'll be ready.
No, not a problem. Take your time. I think
We're just chatting. So
Yeah.
Paul is also joined, but his camera switched off.
No, I think it's bringing the camera forward. I can ask Vidya about that. I just remember the
Oh,
specific
we don't
settings. I
see
think
you on the screen.
maybe
It's a mistake.
camera. I don't know. There is a way to do it. But
I'll bring
your camera.
You can oh yeah.
So basically you can toggle it to come a little.
Shovana, it's all this automatic camera business that they're trying to sort out right now.
Oh, that would be up and down.
exactly, I can understand.
Zoom in. Actually, sorry. Man. Yeah, so I'll just bring you closer. This camera is not.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we can, Paul. We can hear you. We can't see you. Your camera is switched off.
I'm trying to switch it on, but I think it's got to be switched on from the other end.
I don't know. Ours just came on.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, I don't have any charges.
Bottom left-hand corner.
I know. I'm clicking on that. It's just.
I'm gonna go to the other room.
Oh, it's weird seeing ourselves.
Maybe your computer camera.
You'll soon have an audience joining you, so you'll be able to see everybody in the room.
Or just try your computer camera. You know, there's that little switch somewhere.
Yeah, 1 second.
I think we need to stay.
So this is fine. It's just we have to fix this camera to be the camera.
Hello.
Which
Confirm this one.
that would be for slide and stuff.
Okay, that zoomed in a little bit.
Sorry?
I'm saying that zoomed in a little bit, not as much as Shobhanaji wants to zoom in, but at least somewhat.
I like to see the expressions on their faces.
Yeah.
Can you guys
ask Mr. Abraham to turn his
In a way, it's less scary if you don't see the impressions, right? You can say whatever you want and.
Mr. Abraham?
Mr. Abraham, is it possible for you to turn on your camera? Also the mic.
My dear, I'm trying.
Okay.
I think there's some I don't know if I've been disabled or what. From your end, is there something? Because it just says,
Paul, why don't you reboot and come back again? Just
yeah,
exit.
maybe I'll do that. Yeah.
This will keep switching based on because we are talking to the camera. When only she's talking, only that.
No, he's trying.
No, so I've already put the. He's joining. Function already allowed for. Yeah. Lenny is not. That Anushi's hand? Yes. Oh no, we have another presentation for that. Okay. That's fine. Then you can just
It's
type the-
saying cameras off out there. That's going to be very interesting to see.
Hmm,
Oh, that's much better. There we go. We can see.
yes. Much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Paul, we still can't see you.
Is to start the video camera itself. Select another video. Going to one second. Where's your settings tab?
Yes.
Which is, I'm not familiar with
Mr.
this.
Abraham, if you can, do you have a pop-up on your screen which says turn the video on? Because you
Yes,
sent
yes.
you. Yeah, so if you just click on that, it should turn the video on.
No, I think the problem is with Paul's internal settings. Just hang on for a second.
I hope not with his internal settings, with his computers. Otherwise, we're in real trouble.
No, then he'll switch to my laptop. One
Aha.
Yeah,
Settings.
he can see us and he can. We can't see him.
Oh, there's another speaker.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, can you just check with that is
Can people see the screen? Yeah.
I'm just trying to access it from here.
It won't access on because on my laptop.
Okay,
But if you want, just tell me.
sure. Mr. Ibrahim will keep directing.
Okay. And the recording is on. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
We are all set. We're just going to wait for a couple of more minutes for Mr. Abraham to join back in with a different.
So it just charged. It doesn't sleep on it.
Mr. Abraham, we're able to hear you, but we still can't see you. If there's anything, can we assist you in
Give me a
something?
sec. Which one?
Yeah. One second. Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh.
But finally,
It is so wonderful to see all of you. Thank you so much for joining in on Saturday evening from India, Network 9 p.m. Singhal, should we have a chance?
We just want to confirm with the panelists if we're both audible and visible, and
you'll
if all
have
of you
to
can see.
speak a little loudly. Either I'm getting deaf or whichever way it is.
I think, yeah,
Is this-
Hiteshree, if you move your mic closer to you, then I think we'll be in a good space.
Am I audible? Is this better?
Okay.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes. Everybody's audible. I just want to start by saying how incredible it is that technology has made this happen. And we have people here and you're joining in from halfway across the world. Thank you so much. We are very, very thrilled to kick the conference off with this panel. Even though it's virtual, we have a lot of people here who are looking at you and are going to be hearing you speak. So thank you so much for being here with us today. I think I want to start off by giving everyone a little bit of background about how this panel came into being. And Hiteshree and I have been friends at our time here at Harvard, and we got to talking about arts and arts in India in particular way before the conference even was on our mind. So we've been talking about this, we were in conversation. And then one day we were talking about it, and we said, why are only the two of us talking? Everyone should be talking about this. So that's how it came into being. And we're very glad to have very eminent people on this panel today who've tuned in. And I'm really thankful to the audience who's here. Thank you for being here and for making this possible. I want to start off by introducing our panelists. And I'll start with Dr. Narayan. Dr. Shovana Narayan, she's a Kathak guru and performer. She technically needs no introduction, but I have to do this because this is my job on the panel. She is not just a leading Kathak guru and performer in India, but globally somebody who's recognized as someone who's synonymous with the Indian classical performing arts, and someone who's not just been in that space, but taken it to places and platforms and stages where, as an Indian, just speaking about her, being associated with that makes us all very proud. She's a Padma Shri awardee. She's a Sangeet Natak Akademi awardee. She's got the Delhi government's Parishad Samman, the Dadabhai Naoroji Award. The list is very long, but what makes her really incredible in this journey is that I think back in 1994, when the Indian classical performing arts scene was much different from what it looks like today, she was the first person to have done a trilogy on a combination of Kathak dance and flamenco. It was called The Dawn After. So her productions and her ideas and the kind of work that she's done at an international level has stood out since way before Indians, or we as a community, have imagined that it could be the way that it is and the places that she's taken us. So Dr. Narayan, we're very, very honored to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm so honored that you thought of me and included me on this prestigious panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I move on to Mr. Ibrahim. Paul serves in advisory capacities and on the board of several institutions like the Hinduja Foundation and Sanctuary Asia. And his vision for Sarmaya, which we're going to talk about in some time, is that it serves as a link between time and space, past and present. So old wonders can be rediscovered through fresh eyes. And Sarmaya was set up as an online museum in 2015, and its mission was to make Paul's private collection of historical artifacts and art accessible to everyone. In 2017, Sarmaya Arts Foundation came into being, and its mandate is to combine online engagement and on-ground programming, including workshops, lectures, and travels to foster a love for Indian art, history, and culture. And Paul runs Sarmaya with his partner, Pavitra Rajaram. So, Mr. Abraham, thank you so much for being here. This is indeed, I mean, it's an incredible moment. We've followed your work very closely. So thank you for being here today on this panel.
Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure.
And finally, Mr. Singhal. Ananya is a practicing architect and a member of the leadership team of Secure, an Indian multinational in energy and electronics. He's a keen photographer and furniture designer, bringing design thinking to the revolution in the energy domain. At present, his practice Studio SAR is involved in developing green solutions for Indian construction, rethinking the urban realm and understanding what the future holds for our urban fabric. So we've also followed your work. Thank you for being here, Mr. Singhal. And last but not the least, I do want to introduce our incredible moderator, Hiteshree Das. She's a first-year graduate student at the Graduate School of Design here at Harvard and pursuing the Master of Design Studies. Her practice lies at the intersection of experience design, design research, and culture studies. She has formerly worked curating exhibits for the Museum of Design Excellence in partnership with Google Arts and Culture and the Marwar Oral Histories Archives that serves to document the history of Marwar through the lens of its women. Her current research at Harvard challenges authoritarian narratives to decentralize narrative-making process using crowdsourced technologies that serve the dual purpose of archives and public art installations. So that was a very long introduction, but it was much needed. I'm Rinalini. I'm going to be signing off now, but I just want to say for all the audience that's here and all of you that you're here, that I don't think that I've ever been in a room where art and culture is represented in such diverse voices. So that's quite incredible. And I will now pass on the baton to Hiteshree.
Thank you, Rinalini. Is my white mic working? What a great start that's been to the panel with just such detailed introductions. It's really an honor and a privilege to be speaking with all three of you and to be speaking in front of all of you. So we'll dive straight in with Dr. Narayan. I just wanted to open the question about, we'd love to learn about your journey as an artist and how you've witnessed just stages and audiences evolve through your long career. From someone who comes from a Guru Shishya Parampara format, having performed for a crowd for over thousands in India, to a few select delegates on international platforms, I'd like to request you to take us through this journey to begin our discussion today, because I feel it is very critical to bridge the gap between what the arts looked like a few decades ago and where we are today. So with that, we're very excited to be learning about your journey, Dr. Narayan.
Thank you very much indeed. It's been a long journey. And when I think of the audiences or the kinds of performances we had was very different from today. The nature of performances, even the nature of how you presented it. I was born shortly after Indian independence, at 3 years just after that. So it was a state at that time. We didn't have so many auditorias, with all the technological features. We used to have music and dance conferences. Of course, it was there on different, but there was, as far as audience reactions were concerned, or audience participation was concerned, there were thousands. We have performed at that time. I saw people, because I was a little child, and saw people performing with thousands over there, but it comprised of the who's who plus the common person, the common man. And they were all rubbing shoulders, and they were there. So And it was interesting to note that, and of course, then you had the select audience where you had the smaller mehfil kinds. But over the years, that stayed on till the 80s, I would say. And but then the nature changed. In fact, this change started coming from late 70s onwards. What is important is that at that time we didn't. Later on we see that the audience, big auditorium with fabulous technological features, the mic system, the light system, etc. Now, even in terms of, say, let's take the kind of presentation. So the presentation was based on the strength of the artist in earlier period, 50s and 60s and 70s. And today, and so the audience appreciation was that even the common man, even the rickshaw puller or the vendor on the street would be able to understand a false note of a raga or a betala, a false beat. He would be understanding it and he would be talking about it. He would discuss it. But today, it's a completely different picture, scenario. There's a little bit of a disconnect. It now, the traditional arts, I'm talking about the traditional arts. Traditional arts is now in a different milieu. It was always there in a different milieu, but there was more of people participation. And here it is a little different because we have a different kind of audience today. Also, the terms of the nature of the length of performances were different. There you had time. You didn't have these external security problems of today or the distance problems of today. So performance, if it was not there for 2.5, 3, 4 hours, I think that was no performance. Today, it has from 2.5 hours, it came down to 1.5 hours, to 1 hour, and now it's 45 minutes to an hour is more than enough. That is absolutely because the audience attention span has decreased. And so the attention span at that time was greater, but today it is different. So it is very different. And today there is more use of technology. And that is also affecting audience taste because now they want to look into it, and which looks beautiful. There was beauty in the earlier presentation. There's beauty in today's presentation. It's much more sophisticated and it's very beautifully presented. So I see these kind of differences. And if should I continue or because there are many more differences anyway.
No, this has been absolutely, I think you've picked on a very critical point, which is about the audience's attention span. And we'd like to hear the other differences that you have in mind, but I'd like to break here to ask about how does one, so we have the classical art forms, which are designed and crafted to be performed for long hours. And now the audience's attention span is reducing. So how would the how do classical performing artists now transition to cater for the audience, which has a very short attention span?
Earlier it was it's compressed. The entire thing is compressed. So now it is more into the focus is on being spectacular. So there is the focus is that it has to be a spectacular performance. Earlier, the focus was on that it should reach the heart, touch the heart. Here today also we have many performances which touch the heart. But I'm talking in terms of the predominant one is that you want to make it a spectacular. So the use of lights, and in terms of content, you immediately, rather than staying at the slower thing and introducing every movement, or like in a music system, the alap, where each note is introduced. And so even in dance, every movement is introduced, and if you go from a slow pace to a medium pace, and then the slow pace is minimal, and you immediately go into the fast pace. So that is the kind of it, because that is where you have to pack in. So this much has to be packed in. So now the judiciousness is The challenge is that what do you pack in? How do you pack in? It should contain everything, and yet you have to be true to the art form, and at the same time be able to pack in everything so that the attention span of the audience, it just doesn't fritter away. You are there. So I think the challenges are different today. The challenges were different in yesteryears.
Thank you. That's, I think, a very important point that I think we'll be able to touch upon again with Mr. Ibrahim's presentation and the work that he's doing with the Digital Museum, which is to provide the audience information in bite-sized pieces in a very strategic manner. But before that, we'll jump into Mr. Singhal's views on looking at CSR projects as a mode of contemporary patronage. And then we'll follow it up with Mr. Ibrahim's talk about Sarmaya, and then open it to discussion for the audience, as well as have a few moderated questions.
May I just add one more point? That, the
Absolutely.
themes have also changed. The themes today, we are more open to experimentation with themes.
I would also like to bring the audience to realize that, Dr. Narayan, you've been challenging the themes from the very beginning of your career. I see that during the Kargil War, you wanted to support the families. You used art as a medium to advocate. You used art festivals as mediums to enthrall people. So we'd love to hear more about that when we open it up in the discussion. So moving on to Mr. Singhal, we'd love to start with your views and presentations, and then I can come in with questions.
Well, I mean, firstly, you talked about CSR, corporate social responsibility, and how does that link up with the arts? And look, I think when the kings and the gharanas used to come together to create performances, that was royal CSR taking place. When I was a kid in the late 80s, I still remember, I was at a Kishori Umunkar performance at the City Palace in Udaipur, and that performance started, I was 5 years old. That performance started at 8 p.m. and it finished at 3:30 a.m. And that was perfectly fine and acceptable and wonderful and great. And, I snoozed through some of it and I woke up through the rest of it, and it was wonderful. So, performance needs to be given space, it needs to be given time, and it needs to be supported. Now, all of that does mean that it needs funding in some way, shape, or form. And the kings of today are the industrialists and business houses and banks and IT industry and so on and so forth. And therefore, they do step up to a large degree when it comes to supporting the arts. But it's very interesting that they look for branding opportunities when doing so. And it's not necessarily supporting the arts in the way that Paul does, for example, which is, we're not talking about finding some amazing people who are already well known and then using that as a branding opportunity. So I would say that there is a real opportunity for businesses, small and large, and this should not just be about large enterprises, but small enterprises coming together and patronizing the arts using some of their profits. Some of that is actually mandated by the government. If you're big enough, then you need to spend some money on CSR. And therefore, there is a real opportunity. And it reminds me of a particular opportunity that the businessmen of Udaipur had. Again, this is in the 80s and 90s. They came together and they created this thing called the Kumbha Samaro. Maybe Shovana ji has heard of it, but they paid for both a music festival in Udaipur and a dance festival in Kumbhalgarh. It still runs, and both those things have become institutions with very little, government backing attached to it, with very little other support. And it is amazing, the audience that comes to the Udaipur function, to the Kumbhalgarh festival. it is exactly that audience. The mix of that audience hasn't changed. You'll have rickshaw drivers all the way up to professors to industrialists. And it's really a joy to see people come there. It's free seating. It is completely free to go there. And as a result, you get a rickshaw driver sitting right next to the Crown Prince of Udaipur and having a conversation through the music or the dance that they're performing. So there's a real opportunity there. And I think lots of small businesses maybe lose out on that opportunity thinking that it's unaffordable. What people don't realize is actually supporting, especially performing arts and traditional fine arts is actually not expensive. It's the fancy modern art, which is now really more about collections and about investment, that is expensive to support.
Mr. Singhal, would you like to give us a few examples about how you secured CSR initiatives through the third space that you're working upon and even Studio Star? How
Oh,
have you
God.
been able to bridge the gap between the public and do something for the city, nurture that creative force for the youth, and at the same time, like you say, utilized so I'd like to backtrack a little bit and share that when I was having a conversation with Mr. Singhal, he shared with me that a businessman, sorry, Mr. Singhal, would you like to convey that point? Because
But look,
it's really best said from him.
I said this very simple thing. I said, look, I'm a businessman. Everything I do has some sort of self-advantage attached to it. And every business will make sure that they are able to get profit out of absolutely everything they do. That includes our CSR. That includes, the stuff that we're donating. Now, for example, and thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to advertise the work that we're doing. But fundamentally, what we are doing at Secure is we've invested in creating a building, a third space for children and adults to come and really get an experience of all, science, technology, engineering, arts, music, culture, all of it put together in one center. And the idea here very simply is we're a family-owned business. My viewpoint about business is 25 years. It's not the next 5 years. It's not even the next 1 year. It's not the next 3 months. And what that enables me to do is really understand the problems that my business is going to face in the future. One of the problems we face today is we find it hard to get talent in Udaipur. The only way to solve that problem is to actually find talent which thinks diversely in Udaipur itself. And then therefore we have to go and, give human beings that opportunity, children that opportunity to get diverse thought, to be able to get art, culture, science, engineering, and find joy in all of that within our hometown, which then enables us to in 15 years time, 20 years time, hire them as our team members and colleagues and take our company from where it is today to somewhere else. So there's self-interest in absolutely everything that any businessman does. Anyone who claims that they are being altruistic with patronage or with even donations and gifts and whatever else, it doesn't exist. And we should just be okay with that and actually encourage altruistic patronage to make community, society a lot better.
Thank you for being so candid about that, Mr. Singhal. With that, we'll jump to Mr. Ibrahim's presentation, which very much links with Dr. Narayan's first point about attention span and the arts. So, Mr. Ibrahim, we'll just share the screen. Is the screen visible?
Yeah, that's fine. Can we move to the next slide? Yeah. So, like you said in the introduction, one of the things we wish to do is to use the collections that are available to Sarma Arts Foundation in trying to represent India's art culture heritage to a younger audience. Our target group is largely 18 to 44, but we also do work with partners like Pratham, where the audience that we address is way younger. I feel that today many things are happening. Some of them are not necessarily a question of access. I think it's also a question of viewpoints, perspectives, artistic freedom, all of that. Be that as it may, we like to use our collections. We create online and on-ground programming, and basically it is to spark some curiosity and invite people to talk, have conversations, and foster the deeper engagement about our shared heritage. Next. So we use a combination. It's a hybrid. We have a very active digital presence and multiple properties within that. So we do have properties which are like magazine features, which we call spotlights, which are digitally made available. We have films, we have very active social media, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, etc. And we have on-ground activities, which are physical events where we have conversations, which we brand as Sarmaya Talks. We have weekly sessions with smaller audiences called Saturdays at Sarmaya. We have physical exhibitions. And we also have a very large focus on educational outreach, largely working with a bunch of partners. So the idea is to try and, like I put in the slide here, tell all our, cultural and historic stories in a contemporary voice and addressing these audiences in the manner that they receive best. Next. Okay. So what is, in the context of today's discussion, what is patronage? One is, of course, as far as we are concerned, creating a sense of economic and creative security. There are a lot of artists out there, especially if you go to some of these annual events like Dilli Heart and all of that, you'll find people who are otherwise, incredibly talented, incredibly knowledgeable, really dumbing down their offerings in the marketplace, And I'll talk about one of the classic cases as an example, just a couple of slides further. I also feel that, apart from economic and creative freedom, economic security and creative freedom, patronage is also about reaching diverse audiences. How do we enable that? So how do we use technology? Somebody once told me that, my museum experience is never a wow experience unless I'm standing in front of the object. I said that's a difficult binary discussion to have, because what if I don't have the ability to stand in front of the object? That means if I don't have the privilege to physical access, am I never to experience even a percentage of that wow? So to my mind, I don't buy that out. I feel that if people can't get to museums, can we get to them? And it may not be the 100% of standing in front of the Nataraja statue or whatever, but at least you are informed and you can layer the story. See, most people, when they visit a museum, for example, it's literally a one-time tick in the box, because you went there, been there, done that. I'm not coming back here for a long, long time. And therefore, my engagement with the subject and the objects are, ephemeral, and they get over as soon as I leave, unless I'm particularly touched by something and I want to learn more about it. But when we talk about digital storytelling, we have the ability to tell you the story briefly. Then we have the ability to, if your curiosity speaks, to tell you the story in a longer form, in a visual form, in a regular, visitation. So you have the ability to stay in touch on a continuing basis. Then, of course, there's this whole issue of, technology itself allowing the storytelling to be layered. So I can tell you a story. If you're the person who's on the move, doesn't have the time, I can tell you the story in a brief format, or I can tell you a story in a very extended format. So patronage, to my mind, is economic security. It is trying to create long-term commitments. It is about the ability to, people feeling the confidence and comfort to be creative and have the artistic freedom to say and do different things. It allows open dialogue, it allows open perspectives and multiple perspectives, and it allows reach, which is, way, way more than what they were used to hitherto. Next. So this is one of the examples which I would like to, talk about. It's known as the Isanama, and it's essentially an idea which occurred to me, which is that, the Christian iconography is so Western in its orientation, simply because Christianity traveled westward, after the conversion of the Holy Roman Emperor. But it potentially could have come eastwards. And, in Kerala, for example, it did. So it came to Kerala 2000 years ago, while the rest of India probably experienced Christianity as part of the colonial, introductions. So I kind of, talked to some miniature artists in Rajasthan and said that what would happen if we were to imagine this whole story of Christ from an Eastern eye. And we have been working for the last 5 years to create a story on the life and times of Jesus, but from an Eastern eye, and creating a very Eastern perspective to this. So this artist, also needed to feel the comfort that he could pursue this on a 5-year, horizon, without, necessarily feeling insecure about where he'll get his next, rupee from. So, for example, what you see on the screen is our version of the Last Supper. If we were having this in the Indian context, you'd probably be sitting around a fire on the floor, chatting, and it's a village scenario. You're sitting in the Chopal area or wherever, and it doesn't have to be Leonardo da Vinci's version of the Last Supper. So there's a bunch of this. Then can you go down to the next slide? So this is the artist. He's based in Bhilwara. He comes from a very strong lineage of miniature painting. And one of the interesting things is that this project allowed him to go back to all his traditional ways, some of which he had given up. So all the colors he's mixing are now, in the old format. They had shifted a lot of their paints to acrylic. He's now gone back. So if you see the extreme right picture, he's actually creating a green with a stone called malachite. The paper making is now the traditional paper making. So these are layers of paper and cloth, which have to be, very carefully, put together. And then we discuss, a particular episode from, say, the, New Testament. And I leave it to him to creatively imagine what that situation would be represented on paper, And so this is a kind of a jugalbandi. We sit, we chat, we have hours of discussion about representation in our context, and this is what we see. Next.
Mr. Ibrahim, we will go through your slides, but in the interest of time, and something that you said is very interesting. You've talked about digital storytelling. And you've talked about if people can't get to the museums, let's get the museums to them. And when I'm hearing this and when we have these conversations, you think about maybe Mr. Singhal said industrialists are new patrons, but I just feel like technology in itself is a god or a patron in many ways for audiences right now. So I would, picking up from what you said about digital storytelling, and Dr. Narayan's a Kathak artist, and Katha literally means, Kathak means to be a storyteller. So would like to hear her views and Mr. Singhal's views on how, what does this look like for an art that's not tangible, like a performing art or music? How do you...
May I just interrupt there? If you can just take me to the next slide, I will set the tone for this discussion, because this is a performing art. This is another one of the case studies which I would like to talk about, and this is called Toluva Malata. It's a very, it's one of our very incredible performing arts. It's very community oriented. It's usually conducted in villages. It's largely based on our epics. It is very, endemic to the southern part, especially in Andhra, Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu a little bit, and a little bit in Odisha. It's known as Ravana Chaya there, and here again, this was a situation where this is a person who was, making leather lanterns and, things and selling it. And the person, Chidambara Rao, with whom I work, is, to my mind, an extremely accomplished man. The man, he knows his Ramayana by heart. Of course, it's the, Ranganatha Ramayana version of the Ramayana. He knows the whole thing by heart. He knows nuances to the many stories of our epics. He can actually sing. He can actually make these puppets. But the man was slowly being reduced to making leather lamps, and selling it at some of these exhibitions. So to revert back to what he is truly, deserving of in terms of his ability, in terms of the reach. And today the man is, and his group of performers and those who are making Toluva Malata are now, performing on international fora. He gets a lot of commission work. He's, now much more confident, and he's not going to go back in a hurry to making little lamps and lanterns. And, I can talk you through the whole story, but I'd be happy to listen to Dr. Narayan and Ananya.
Dr. Narayan and Mr. Singhal, would you like to respond?
Dr. Narayan, you're
Sorry.
on mute.
Yeah, I think you're muted. I don't.
Sorry.
There was a story told in your reaction right there.
Yes, exactly. So just to take it forward from what where Paul has left, and the question that Mrinalini asked about what is the nature of performing arts. So actually the nature of performing arts, it is quite evanescent in nature, because it is an experience. You cannot catch it. You have to feel it, you have to live it, breathe it. Now that, when it is frozen in time, becomes a painting or a sculpture, or something written down. So even when you're writing a verse, you're just capturing a moment or an experience, but the audience who's there actually experiences it. So even if you're seeing the same Ramayana, what the shadow puppets are doing, the same Ramayana, today the experience will be different from tomorrow's experience or from the next moment. So that is something that is very beautiful about performing arts. And that also brings out, there's a lot of creativity. In fact, if I go back to our Natya Shastra, because in our Indian context, that kind of a Bible that we have, where all the codifications are there, it is said that, there are so many ways of communicating, but the most effective way of communication is what reaches the heart. And that is the Kanta Sammet Updesh. So it is an Updesh. It is through the story. We are also communicating. We are sending out messages, not only sending out message of beauty and aesthetics, but also messages of values, of something, which makes you think at the same time, but it reaches the heart. So this entire experience is captured in the performing arts, which you have to feel, you have to experience it. And that is something unique about it. And in a way, I would say that your three panelists are completely interlinked. If one is a fleeting moment in time, the other one is capturing that fleeting moment in time, and the next one is actually seeing how to see that you create an atmosphere where you are you're appreciating the aesthetics as well as encouraging new creations. So I think it's a beautiful panel where all the three are interconnected because they are all inextricably linked. And now I would also like to say that as far as the performing arts are concerned, when I'm talking about performing arts, I'm largely going to be talking about the traditional performing arts. And that let us talk about the profits. What can we take? You were talking about the CSR and a kind of a sort of the economic part of it and others. But let us also think about other aspects of profits. What is it? It is talking about, because we come from the people. It is coming out of the people. It is a more refined way. The classical performing, in today's term, the classical performing arts, it is a systematic presentation, but so are the traditional the folk forms. Now, it defines the identity of a nation. What the performing arts is doing, as well as all visual arts, it's defining the identities. But also the performing arts, I would like to say that the recent COVID and the lockdown actually brought to the fore how strong it makes, or a balanced person it makes the artists are, because most of the artists didn't succumb to depression. They found newer avenues of creativity. And or people engaged in and around the artistic field. And so what I would say that it helps in the profit is that it helps in creating a more balanced personality rooted in the culture, but at the same time being a very global citizen with a very creative mind and open mind. And also I would say that that the performing arts, it is also taking up, it is constantly evolving, and it's never rooted in time. And it's from the people are evolving, our thought processes are evolving, our way of living is evolving, and it's a constant cycle of evolution. And so accordingly, all our performing arts, our traditional arts are also in sync with the pace of movement, the cycle which is churning throughout.
I think
Thank you, Dr. Narayan.
to build on what,
Sure.
just to build on what Dr. Narayan and Paul said. Look, I think the idea of patronage is now changing. It used to be about money. It used to be about creating space and so on and so forth. I think now the two big moments that we have is the notion of giving time and the notion of giving attention. And I'd like to just come back to some experiences that I had in terms of people who aren't the rich, still being able to become patrons. I think, number one, technology is great and wonderful at being able to take the attention of one or two and making it something which then gets to the attention of many. And the same thing with time, if we can give time, if we can all volunteer our time to be able to promote the things that we are interested in, and to be able to promote the things that make us excited, then actually that itself is a very strong form of patronage. And actually, perhaps arts of all sorts need probably more people giving it time than they need people giving it money. And therefore, I would say that, it doesn't matter who you are, what your business is, what your work is, you can absolutely become a patron of the arts. Just volunteer, go to your nearest theater, go to your nearest uh, auditorium, figure out where they need help and go and help. And that makes you a patron of the arts.
May I just add to what Ananya is saying, is that we all are artists. Every person is an artist. So if we realize that, because we are living with art throughout the day, either by humming, singing, or in our dressing, everywhere there's design, everywhere there's art, there's movement, there is rhythm, whichever way you want. And so it is, if we realize that and we understand its value and be able to take it forward. The only problem is that perhaps we are living it, we are breathing it, but without realizing that this is art that we're living. Each one is living an art form. And we just have to develop that sensitivity within us to be able to recognize it, and also recognize the fact that there are people involved who are actually bringing it, sort of that little thing to your doorstep, to in front of you, which you are also becoming a part. So it's a two-way process. One is giving, one is taking, and one is also emanating at the same time. So it's just a three-way process.
I think you've been able, with this response, Dr. Shovana, Narayan, and Singhal, you've been able to really loop the entire conversation well. And what my largest takeaway is that in addition to encouraging the arts and fostering creativity, we must also foster the role of individual patrons. My question is that how does one do that? I know you briefly touched upon it by saying that we should volunteer, we should go forth and see what is the smallest way in which we could support. But how does one really encourage people to become supporters of the arts so that it becomes that two-way process of continuing the art forms, continuing the creative force, but at the same time also having people who are equally ready to support the arts? Just as few decades ago, we would have the common person also sitting for a 5-hour long performance.
So I think, sorry, I'm going to jump in here, but I think it starts with the kind of things that Shovana ji and Paul are already doing. The work that Paul is doing in terms of getting museums, getting fine arts, getting experiences and stories to other people is absolutely incredible. One of the biggest problems we have in Udaipur is the fact that we don't live in Bombay or Delhi. We don't have the National Museum of Modern Art. We don't have the NPPA theater. I mean, even the wealthy don't have access to culture at that point. And therefore, actually being able to bring that to people is really, really important. And again, just before this talk, I was on YouTube watching Dr. Narayan's dances, and I was surprised very pleasantly as to how many people had viewed it, and clearly it was something that people were yearning to get to. And I think that's going to be the next start, using the technology to be able to get more of all of this to the individuals, and then that inspires them to do more. The next stage after that inspiration is, well, where are the opportunities? And identifying those opportunities are going to be the big challenges for local communities. And I'm not sure there's an easy answer to that problem. How do we find them, the opportunities, and how do we marry up the opportunities with the people who actually want to volunteer, give time, give space, and help grow what seems to be difficult to grow arts?
May I just jump in what Ananya said just before that? I would say that we should have an integrated learning. When you talked about how the common man and the people, so we should have an integrated learning system right in childhood, because at the moment, most homes do not have it. So even our system, now, if we have an integrated system, it's not that you have to learn music, dance, or museum, but at least an awareness of it, like you're doing history, geography, mathematics. One period, awareness of what it is. The develop an eye. If I'm looking at Paul's museum, develop an eye to see what to look into it, how to appreciate it. If I'm looking at something or even watching a performance, say a shadow puppetry, to develop a ear, an eye for it, and also understand it. So I think that awareness needs to be cultivated right since childhood. And once we do that, we sow the seeds of sensitivity and of awareness. And later on, when they grow up and we are in different vocations, that somehow the other, that sapling, which is now in a tree, a plant, will actually bear fruit. We'll see that sensitivity being, the fragrance spreading in whatever you do.
To that point, Dr. Narayan, I think Mr. Ibrahim's work with Sarmaya, which is especially looking at working with Pratham, which is developing modules for children from rural parts of India and providing them aesthetic experiences from all of our folk practices, is, I think, really that seed that Sarmaya has been able to plant. Yes, Mr. Ibrahim, would you like to?
Yeah, I think one of the things we've discovered, I'm sure a lot of people knew that to be a fact, but our education system was very focused on numeracy and literacy, language literacy and numeracy skills. One of the things that we found that enhances substantially the general EQ, the confidence, and the ability to be independent was also a sense of do it yourself, a sense of awareness of art, culture, and the sensitivities arising around that knowledge. And that's why we work with 2 or 3 large NGOs where we create content which is then, downloaded to school. So like Pratham, for example, has the advantage of having an infrastructure where the kids in clusters of 5 have access to tabs. So what we do is we create the content, download it, on a regular basis. Kids work with it. They get familiar. They get familiar with the crafts. They get familiar with the art forms. They get, familiar with other aspects. So, for example, what we have is a multi-genre collection. So we have, for example, coins. So they, also look at history, geography, through the aesthetics of the coins, through the storytelling available in the coin. And the kids then get that sensitivity and that appreciation that goes beyond the typical academic curricula. And, I agree entirely with Dr. Narayan's point that, the awareness is the starting point. And with the little kids, when we are talking about, organizations like Pratham and Learning Links Foundation, with whom we work very actively, it's kids in the, 7 to 12 year range where we start. Right? So that's really, I think, what we need to do more of. We need to build that awareness. We need to create that pride in our own diversity and the depth of our culture and heritage. Every state, every district has something unique. And I don't know if we have created that level of pride and curiosity about them, which we need to do. And from there will emerge on both sides. They will emerge the people who will be the patrons through the process of appreciating and going for these events and being part of, the community that consumes. these art forms, and also the other side, the creators, people like Dr. Narayan, who will be, spending lifetimes in learning, disseminating, creating the depth of understanding in forms which most of us will never ever achieve, but at least we must feel the pride to want to get to know them.
I'm
I
sorry.
would say that the individual like Pratham, etc., are doing it. But I was also wanting that even other systems, the so-called formalized system of education, should also integrate it right in a different way, not as just a subject for the scenic Cambridge or for the higher secondary, but as something that where the awareness is there right from primary school as we grow, that history, geography, mathematics. So
Yeah.
I think that would be.
You're right.
I'm really sorry. I'm going to be a buzzkill, but I'm the official timekeeper, and we are coming to the end of this discussion. I don't know if we have time to take questions. Unfortunately not, but to everyone who's tuned in, I think you can reach out to the panelists, and I'm really sorry to of the wonderful audience that's here, but we haven't been able to take their questions. But I just want to say a couple of things that that has evolved from this discussion. And I think it's a personal win for Hiteshree and myself that the number of times during this panel discussion, I wanted to high five you and be like, we've done it. So it's very, we're feeling very cool. And to think about the things that you said about how this narrative's disappearing from the common man's conversations every day, but how to bring that back in with individual efforts that each one of you in your realm puts in. Thoughts about, are the industrialists our new patrons? Is technology the new god? About integrated learning and how, just Mr. Singhal saying altruism doesn't exist. So everything has to be with the profit motive. So I feel like this, we envisioned this as a conversation on art and culture, but we've touched on economics and politics, and there's so much that we still haven't finished talking about. But we are very, very thankful that you could tune in. And also want to, before I pass it on to Hiteshree, thank Hiteshree for all her effort in stringing this panel together. Thank you so much, Hiteshree.
Thank you so much, Manalini. I think it's really been a very enjoyable, collaborative process. And I think we've just started this conversation, and it's really exciting to be able to bring this conversation at the India conference, which is predominantly between the business school and the Kennedy School, which touches upon policy and governance and conversations around business. But to really integrate the arts is fundamental, and especially when we're looking at reimagining India 2047, this is a very important sort of seed to have when we're looking at that vision. And with just such an enriching discussion today, you've been able to really set the stone for that vision. And I'd like to thank the audience for being here and supporting this conversation, and also our virtual audience for really tuning in, taking the time out. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye, guys.